Hey, before we jump in, I have a question for you. Do you spend more time thinking about making art than actually making it? Start things that you never finish? Make work and then stack it against the wall facing away from you so you don't have to look at it? If any of that sounds familiar, I want to talk to you. I'm developing a program right now specifically for artists dealing with self doubt and creative blocks. And to make it actually helpful, I want to understand what's really hard for you right now. So I'm looking for artists to interview, to talk with. This is purely research. There's no pitch. It's just me wanting to know what's going on with you in your studio. And I am happy to answer your questions about creative confidence in exchange. So if that sounds like you, go to savvypainter.com/survey to tell me what's going on. And if we're a good fit, I will reach out to you to schedule a call. That's savvypainter.com/survey. Okay, let's get started with today's episode.
Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of the Savvy Painter podcast. I'm your host, Antrese Wood. Welcome back. If you've been listening for a while, if you're new, hello, hello. I am so glad you found the podcast. So, a few weeks ago, I did this episode called Your Studio Isn't a Courtroom, and I got a lot of responses to that. It was a lot of really good responses. I got messages from so many of you saying that that episode completely changed how you see your self-talk in the studio, that it named something you'd been experiencing, but you didn't quite have the words for it yet. And the most common question I got after that episode was, okay, I can see that I'm doing this. I can see that I'm treating my studio like I'm on trial in a courtroom and I'm putting myself on trial every single time that I paint. But what do I actually do about it? So today, that's what we're going to talk about. Part 2, the practical tools. What do you actually do when you catch yourself in that sort of courtroom mode? When you notice that you're cross-examining your painting, cataloging all the evidence of why it's not good enough, delivering a guilty verdict before you even finish the painting, because naming the pattern is step 1. But you also need tools to interrupt that pattern, ways to redirect yourself when you notice that you're doing it again. So that's what today's episode is about. Practical, tactical tips that you can do in the moment when you catch yourself treating yourself that way. Okay, so let's dive in. So number 1, this is so simple, but it's also the most powerful tool, and it is this. When you catch yourself in that mode, in courtroom mode, just name it out loud if possible. It's going to sound like this. I'm doing that courtroom thing again, or I'm putting myself on trial again. That's it. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to stop it. You just have to notice it and name it. Here's why this works. When you're in the middle of the pattern, it feels true. You believe it. It feels like you're just objectively observing all the problems with your painting, and that's the truth. It feels like you're being realistic. You're using critical thinking, and you're seeing things clearly. But when you name it, when you say, I'm treating my studio like a courtroom right now, you create a teensy little bit of separation between you and the pattern. And you also recognize that this is a thought, this is a behavior. You stop identifying with the critic. You stop believing that just for a split second, you stop believing that courtroom voice is the absolute truth. And you recognize that this is a pattern you're in, and it's not a reality that you're observing. And that teensy little bit of space, it's huge, because once you have that space, you have choice, you have options. So practice this. When you notice you're mentally ripping apart your painting, just stop, take a breath, and then say, I'm doing the courtroom thing. Or here I am doing that courtroom thing. Here I am pretending I'm a lawyer in my own studio. Don't judge yourself for it. Don't make it mean something about you. Just name it. And if you didn't notice, I use a lot of humor when I'm calling things out for myself, but do it in the voice that feels comfortable, feels neutral for you. And it can just be, there it is. That's the pattern. You don't know how hard it is for me not to do a little whoop, there it is. Okay, because I just like to make naming it fun for myself. So you can make it fun for yourself, or you can just be very neutral about it. Do what works for you. And then you can add this. And I'm choosing something different. I'm giving myself other options. You're not trying to stop the thoughts. You're just acknowledging them and choosing to do something that works better for you. Okay, so now tool number 2, we're going to ask a different question. So the second tool is to interrupt the courtroom questioning with a different kind of question. Because here's what's happening when you're in courtroom mode. You're asking prosecuting questions. Like, what's wrong with this? Where did I mess up? What should I have done differently? Why isn't this working? And every single one of those questions is designed to find problems, to gather evidence of failure, to build a case against yourself. So the tool is to deliberately ask different questions, questions that investigate without prosecuting, questions that explore without being judgmental. So, for example, instead of what's wrong with this, try what's interesting about this. Or instead of where did I mess up, try asking yourself, what surprised me here? Or another example is instead of asking yourself, why isn't this working? Which, by the way, that's usually the favorite one because it seems so innocent, but it's not. It really isn't. Try asking yourself, instead of why isn't this working, ask yourself, what is working? What are the moments in this painting that I enjoy looking at or that I enjoyed making? What's one little thing that I want to add or I want to take away, right? It gives you something concrete. Another example could be, instead of what should I have done differently, try what do I want to do next? You feel the difference in any of those? The reason these questions work, the reason these questions are helpful is because they still let you look at your work critically. And by critically, I mean like we're assessing it. They still let you evaluate and assess, but they're not building a case against you. They're not presuming already that you're guilty of something. They're building curiosity. And curiosity is the antidote to judgment. Judgment feels closed. Curiosity feels open. So look for questions that give you an open feeling versus statements or questions that feel like it's just shutting you down. So when you catch yourself in that courtroom mode, pause, notice what question you're asking, notice the statements you're making, notice the beliefs that you're holding, and deliberately choose an open question. What's interesting about this right now? What do I like? And if you only remember one, let it be, what's interesting about this right now? That one question can completely change your relationship with your work. Okay, the third tool is to shift from verdict mode to experiment mode. In courtroom mode, you're trying to determine, is this good or bad? It's very black and white. Did I succeed or fail? Guilty or not guilty? You're looking for a verdict, a final judgment, and a conclusion. And that verdict mindset is incredibly high stakes because it's black and white. It's either this or that. Because if the painting is bad, if you failed, if you're guilty, then what does that mean about you as a painter? So instead, shift into experiment mode. Stop asking, is this good? And start asking, what happens if? What do I like? Right? So a couple of examples. What happens if I add more warmth to that shadow? What happens if I soften this edge? What happens if I push the contrast a little bit further or I pull it back? Every decision becomes an experiment, not a test that you're going to pass or fail. It's just an exploration, a sort of let's see what this does. And here's what's beautiful about this. Experiments can't fail. They can only give you options and information. If you try something that doesn't work, it's not that you failed. You just learned that that particular thing doesn't work for this particular painting. And that is really useful information. So then you try something else. This completely removes the pressure of getting it right because you're not trying to get it right. You're only trying to discover what works, what you like and what you don't like. And that small shift from verdict to experiment can transform your entire experience in the studio or with this painting. Instead of every brushstroke being this high stakes decision that could prove that you're not good enough, every brushstroke is just data. It's just information, just part of the exploration, part of the excitement, part of the adventure, and a way to validate your voice. I like this, not that. The fourth tool is something I talk about all the time, but it's worth repeating because it's very effective. When you catch yourself in courtroom mode, ask yourself this: would I ever talk to another artist this way? Would you ever look at a friend's painting and say, ugh, this is terrible. What were you thinking? Why are you even doing this? It's a total waste of time. Would you ever tell another artist, you are so far behind, you're never going to catch up? I'm so embarrassed for you. Of course not. You would never speak to another artist that way. You'd be horrified if someone else spoke to an artist that way. Like if you were in a studio somewhere and you overheard this, you'd just be like, "Hmm." But you say things like that to yourself all the time, in your head, in your studio, every single day. So the tool is this: have your own back. Notice the language that you're using, and then deliberately shift to the language that you would use with a friend, with someone that you love and adore. You'd probably say things more on the lines of, this is hard. I know it's hard, but you're learning, and it's okay that it doesn't look exactly how you wanted it yet, right? And you might notice things that you like about it. Or you might say to a friend of yours, hey, you're trying something new, so of course it's going to feel uncertain, but you've got this. Or you might say, I can see what you're going for here, but let's figure out what it needs next. Or maybe it's something like, hey, listen, you've been at this for hours. Why don't we take a quick little walk around the block and get some fresh air? Because maybe you just need a break. What you would say is going to be supportive, encouraging, honest, but kind. And I know what some of you are thinking, but if I'm kind to myself, I'll get soft. I'll stop improving. I'll slack off. I need the harsh critic to push me to get better. But here's the truth. The harsh critic does not make you better. It makes you afraid. It makes you play small, and it makes you want to hide. Kindness doesn't make you soft. It makes you feel safe. Kindness gives you that security to take risks, to try things, to fail, and try again. So talk to yourself like you would talk to a friend. Show yourself that you have your own back. You are your own best friend. It's not coddling yourself. It's creating an environment and a relationship with yourself that supports you and actually works. Okay, so one more tool for you. The fifth tool is the most concrete, and it's this. When you're stuck in that courtroom mode, stop thinking and just make one mark. Just one. One brushstroke, one adjustment, one decision. Because here's what happens in courtroom mode often is that you freeze. You feel unsafe, so you freeze. You stand there analyzing and criticizing and trying to figure out what to do next. But what you're actually doing is you're trying to figure out, what can I do next so that I'm not criticized, not what to do next that's best for this painting. And the longer that you stand there, the bigger that decision becomes in your head. So you make one mark. And maybe it's not the right mark. It's not the perfect mark, but it's a mark. Now you have something to evaluate, and then you can respond to it. This does two things. First, it interrupts the mental spiral. You stop thinking in circles and you take action, even if it's the tiniest little action, right? You start mixing colors. Second, it reminds you that painting is a conversation. You make a mark, and then the painting responds, and you respond back. It's a dialogue, but you can't have a dialogue if you're just standing there thinking. You have to participate, and also you have to make a mark so that your painting can respond in its own language. Your painting is nonverbal, if you hadn't noticed. Like, we say that it talks to us. It does. I can hear it. But there's not an actual sound that comes out of it. So when you catch yourself frozen in judgment, just make a mark. Give yourself something to respond to. Start that momentum going again, and then see what happens next. Okay, I said that's the last one, and I lied. I have another one for you. This is the sixth one. You're going to remind yourself what your studio's job actually is. Your studio is not a courtroom. Its job is not to determine your worth. Your studio's job is not to prove whether you're good enough or talented enough or deserving enough. Your studio's job is to be the place where you practice. It's to be the place that's safe for you to practice. And that's it. You go into your studio, you practice, you try things, you experiment, you make the work. Some of it turns out the way you wanted, and some of it doesn't, and then you do it again. Your studio should be the safest place you have, the place where you're allowed to be yourself. You're allowed to try things. You're allowed to make mistakes. And I'm using air quotes there. It's the place where you can risk failure without that failure meaning anything about your value as a person. So when you catch yourself in courtroom mode, remind yourself, this is my practice space. This is where I learn. This is where I'm allowed and encouraged to mess up. And then give yourself permission to practice without judgment. Okay, so those are 6 tools you can use when you catch yourself treating your studio like a courtroom. Name it to tame it. Ask a different question. Shift from verdict to experiment, from judgment to curiosity, to quote Ted Lasso. Talk to yourself like you would talk to a friend. Make another mark. Take some action. And remember your studio's job, okay? You don't have to use all 6 of those. You don't have to be perfect at any of them. You have 6 options now. Just pick one, practice it, see how it fits, adjust it, try it on, make any changes that are more effective for you. Notice what happens, okay? Everybody's different. You might use all of the tools or just some of them or just one of them. Either way is better. Here's what I want you to understand. You're not trying to eliminate the courtroom voice entirely. You're just trying to notice it sooner. Redirect it just a teensy bit faster than you did the last time. And you're choosing something different more often than you're choosing to persecute yourself. And every time you do, you're building new neural pathways. You're teaching yourself a different way of being in your studio, a way that's more curious than critical, more experimental than judgmental, and more compassionate than harsh. And that creates an environment where creativity flows freely and you feel safe. All right, that's what I have for you today. Remember, your studio is not a courtroom. It's your safe space. It's your practice space. Treat it that way and treat yourself that way because you totally deserve it. Have a beautiful week, and I will talk to you soon.